Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Rob Nieder. I'm going to be your Master of Ceremonies for the next 6 weeks as we go through this True Love Project 2016. And I just really want to thank you for joining me here. It is so awesome to be able to look out across this room and see all of the friendly faces, and we're going to have a good time here, I do believe. We're going to have some fun. And we're probably going to have a few tears. But, you know, in the midst of it all, there's just going to be a great opportunity for some growing in our relationships. I do believe that. This project for me started last year. Actually, I had been hearing about this book, The 5 Love Languages, for some time. And it wasn't until I actually went to a men's retreat, and I had a good brother of mine who's here in the room tonight with me hand me this book and encouraged me to read it. And as I was walking around the camp where we were at, there were so many men that were just there, saw that book in my hand there, like, man, that's a good read. That's a good book right there. And so with so many people saying so many good things about it, I knew that I had to give it a go and check it out, right? And there's some things that I learned about it here. For one of them, I want to tell you some real values I found in it. Value number 1, this baby's pretty thin. All right? So if you're not a reader, I'm going to tell you, you can get through this book, all right? And once you start getting into it, for me, it just kind of came alive. You know, I could relate to the stories in this book here because it was talking about real people with real experiences going through stuff. And I could see myself in many of the examples that were shared. So it caught my attention right away, and it was not a lot of psychobabble. You know what I'm talking about there? I mean, it just got right to the points of thing, and I could relate to it. And I think that you're going to find that you're going to be able to relate to it as well as we look at it. And I'll tell you that, so I read it, and I took the next step. I began applying it in my marriage. And it was amazing to, you know, just for me to see. It wasn't like overnight or anything like that. But you know, there's a saying that's kind of stuck with me, and it's a happy life, a happy wife. So I was doing what I could to make my sweetheart happy. And some of it, I'll tell you, that came naturally. Some of it was, I had to work at it, all right? It had to be done intentionally. But the intentionality for me came with a change of this mindset. I mean, I'm doing the dishes, I'm making the bed, I'm taking my son to school because it is communicating love to my wife. And then I found that, well, when I'm doing this, she's finding more time and reasons to communicate love back to me. And I've really found that there's been a deepening growth in our relationship just walking through this. I also realized that while I've got some areas to improve on, I also have 30 years of experience in this loving, thriving marriage of mine. And there are some things that I do quite well. And those things that, well, maybe I need a little bit of improvement on, I realize that I've got plenty of friends who speak the other love languages, and I could learn from them as well. They could teach me about the love languages that they are fluent in. So the next thing I did is that I began interviewing them to find out how they communicate those love languages to their spouse. And if this works right, I want to introduce you to some of them via video right now. So cross your fingers here. We've been having some technical difficulties with the sound. Can I go first?
Sure. Holly Odell, and we've been married, just celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Corey Odell, and yeah, so we were just laughing the other day. We've been together 25 years,
Yep.
including courtship and whatnot. So,
Kelly Bradley.
Zach Bradley, and 21 lovely years.
I'm Mark.
I'm Terry, and
We've been married 24 years.
Nick and Jackie Emasager. We've been married for, gosh, has it been 25 years? No,
This year,
maybe
yeah, this year will
25.
be 25 years.
Yeah.
We're Rob and Christine Meter, and we've been married for 30 years.
My name is Marina Lotta Ray, and I have been married for 42 and a half years.
I'm Larry Lottery, and I guess I have been married for 42 and a half years also. I guess.
Well, let me tell you that these are the couples that you're going to be hearing over the next 6 weeks. They are some folks that I really care for deeply in my life. And I personally selected them and invited them to come and share their love language and their love stories with us. So if you get as much out of this as I did, I know that you're going to be blessed by it. Each night we're going to be covering 2 chapters out of the book. So tonight we're going to be looking at chapters 1 and 2. And the speakers are going to go over, they're going to kind of give us a deeper dive as we look into each one of these chapters with our guest speakers. Now, I can only stress to you this, that while some of our speakers might actually be marital counselors and coaches, what we're going to be sharing, they're just tools, all right? By themselves, they may be nothing more than an interesting anecdote. But when the right tool is applied to the right task and with the right heart and intentions, amazing things can be accomplished. After the presentations, we're then going to take some time towards the end of each evening, okay? And we're going to discuss with your table mates some of the things that were covered tonight. We'll have a little bit of an icebreaker here, and I would ask you to look around at the folks at your table. Hopefully, this is going to be the group that you're going to be with. We might have to do a little bit of shuffling. There's some folks that are not here tonight, and we're working to accommodate everyone. But for the most part, this is going to be the group that we're going to be meeting with each week, and we'll have a time a little bit further on to get to know each other a little bit better that you're sitting at the table with here. So some administrative notes for you. Okay, so if you've got a cell phone, if you could silence that or make sure that that's silenced right now. We're gonna cover a lot of material in a short amount of time, and we want to minimize the distractions as much as possible here. And another distraction would probably be all those drinks and appetizers over there on the side. So I hope you filled up your plates, because I'm going to ask you not to be running up there for any refills once we get going, okay? They'll be there when we conclude as well. The restrooms, if you need to use the restrooms, they're right out this door and across the hallway. And for those of you that brought your kids, you know that they're right down the in the North Fork room there. And in the event that we've got some sort of a fire emergency, you can see the exits. These are our nearest exits right here behind those curtains. We would go exit right out there. It goes right into the back parking lot. And your children would also exit through their doors there. We'll all join up in the parking lot if anything comes to that. Let's see here. I would, if we were ready to get started, I would love to introduce you to our first guest couple to present on this first talk of what happens to love after the wedding here. Now, I'll tell you that our first speaker here, he has actually been in ministry longer than he has been married, which I don't know if this is going on 5 decades of ministry or what here now. But he currently serves as the pastor of Flathead Ecclesia. And he and his wife, Rena, are really special friends to Christine and I. I definitely cherish them very much in my life, and I was really honored that they wanted to support me in doing this this whole project. What happens to love after the wedding? I imagine that they both, in all of the years of mentoring and ministering to couples, probably know maybe all too well sometimes what this means, as I know they've counseled many folks. So if you would join me now in please welcoming Pastor Larry and Rena Lowry.
Right. I'm not sure I appreciate being called a tool. I've been called a tool, I suppose, a few times. But when you call my wife a tool, I'm telling you that.
No, I need to use it.
All right.
Why don't you hold it?
All right.
That'll give you some.
Teamwork.
Well, I didn't know I was going to be first here, so I'll jump right in now. Oh, they're saying it. Okay. Think back to the days when you first met your spouse, the person you are now married to or planning to be married to.
Sorry, I blew up.
Remember the newness and the emotions and the thrill and the giddiness of being in love? You had found Mr. or Miss Perfect, and you wanted to do everything in your power to make them view you in the same way. Their amazingly good qualities were all that you saw, and if they had any bad qualities, they were far overshadowed by the good ones. As you got to know them a little more, you became convinced that this person was who you were meant to be with. Obviously, if you decided during the dating stage that they weren't meant for you, that they had too many negatives, or that the feelings just weren't there, you probably broke up and tried again with someone else who eventually caught your eye. And the cycle repeated itself until you found the one that you eventually chose to marry. In the pre-marriage stage, whether it lasted weeks or months or even years, I think there are some common characteristics of most relationships. And though it plays out differently with men and women, I think both have hopes, dreams, needs, and expectations, and they see the other person as the answer to those. Maybe as the knight in shining armor who can make the dreams come true, maybe as the woman who makes him feel like king of the world. During the pre-marriage stage, the focus is on feelings, showing love to the other person, being what the other person wants or what we think they want. We are not so focused on our needs because we want the other person to see us as the answer to their needs. Like in the animal world, the male struts his stuff and appears as manly as possible. The female wants to be beautiful, desirable, alluring. Back and forth the pursuing and being pursued goes until finally both say I do and the prize is captured. But can the polish and shine and best foot forward be maintained forever in the stress and humdrum and reality of married life? I really don't think so. And I actually don't think it is supposed to. That's slightly cynical, but depending on how long the courtship lasted before marriage, or whether, as is more common today, the couple lived together before marriage, eventually we are going to see more and more of the real person as they let down their guard. And we see aspects of their behavior or character or personality that were not so apparent to us in the early days. That's life. It happens that way in relationships, friendships, families, work associations, and especially in marriage. As we get to know someone better and allow them to know us better, we realize that the prince or the princess is human, flawed, broken, real. And they see that we are too. We do see strengths and good qualities that we hadn't been previously aware of. But again, it's fallen human nature to let the bad overshadow the good. Eventually, the person who completed you and made your world spin can become the person who irritates you, who leaves things laying around, who causes more work, is actually crude and gross at times instead of acceptably manly. And she doesn't always look quite like a princess in the mornings, and she actually turns into an unrecognizable person during some times of the month. She no longer makes you feel like king of the world. The feelings of love can wear thin at times when the person we married seems to have changed, or when he or she is no longer so focused on making us feel good. When our needs are not being met, when we are trying to show love and we feel like it isn't being returned. At this point in too many marriages, one or both decide, I've made a mistake. You're not the person I thought you were. I don't love you anymore. I've had enough of this. The marriage can end, and all too soon, one or both partners start again with someone else who makes them feel good, and the cycle just continues. This does not have to be how the story goes, though. Although every marriage will face challenges, struggles, and low times, I think there are some key principles that help answer the question in chapter 1 of the book, what happens to love after the wedding? Ideally, love would grow and develop and become more solid and lasting and real. We would come to know the strengths and the weaknesses of the person we married, and through all of that, we would love them and show that love in ways that made them feel loved. This chapter tells the story of a man who had been down the road of 3 marriages that all started in love and all ended in divorce, despite his efforts, especially in his last marriage, to let his wife know how much he loved her, how beautiful she was, how proud he was of her. Somehow, despite all of his words, she was not feeling loved. And eventually he said that he lost his love for her and began to resent her, and the marriage ended by mutual agreement. What a sad story, but all too often a true one. The author uses this story to lay the groundwork for the book we are studying in these next 6 weeks. In his years of study, he came to the conclusion that just as people speak different verbal languages, they speak and receive different emotional love languages. The unfortunate man in the story had been speaking his own love language, but his wife was not hearing it as love and was feeling unloved because he wasn't speaking her love language. How sad that even in the best of marriages, and despite sincere and best efforts, often when we are acting in love, our partner isn't receiving it as love. Even though both are trying to make the other feel loved and valued, the partner isn't hearing it that way, and without intentional effort from both spouses, a downward cycle can begin. As one partner feels unloved or uncared for, he or she begins to show less love to the other, begins to give up, and think it isn't worth the effort to give and not receive anything in return. The sad and surprising thing is that both partners can be feeling this way, that they are giving but not receiving. I'm glad you all are here and have decided to join us for this. Stick with us during these 6 weeks, and as we, some of your host couples, share stories from our marriages and how we've learned that the insights in the book apply to our particular relationships, we hope that you'll grow and experience that with us. I think it'll be fun and it'll be low pressure, because if it were high pressure, I would have told Rob no.
Thanks, my sweet. Well, I'm glad to be here too. I think it's going to be a great series. I'm looking forward to it. I suspect you are here because you have an awareness that marriages can be improved. I hope that that is the case anyway. It seemed like the author has discovered some pretty timeless truths, particularly in modern American relationships. These concepts, I don't know how these concepts would play out in, more restrictive cultures, a Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist culture, or in times of real stress, times of war, times of famine, so I don't know. But in my whole lifetime, we have had relative peace, relative security, and so I think these concepts really, really apply in modern America. My perceptions are colored by over 40 years of preaching, pastoring, marrying and burying, counseling, attempting to help folks live more joyful, productive lives. My viewpoint may also be impacted somewhat by feeling at times like the doctor in the emergency room. You know, everybody you see is hurting, and so sometimes that can color my perspectives. Also, the fact that I was raised in the 50s and 60s, and you know, am now an old guy, that could color things too. So it'll be interesting to see whether my experiences connect with you. So I'll look for a little bit of feedback here directly. But what happens after the wedding? You know, the entire romantic or sexual or marital piece of life is one of the, it's a fascinating, challenging, exciting, weird, and yet a profoundly cool thing. I think it is one of, if not the very most important gifts that God has given to mankind, is this whole business of marriage. And yet, few things cause the heartache, the pain, the trauma of failed or broken relationships in this area. I mean, think about it. Without drinking and without lost love, country music wouldn't exist. At some point along the line, boys just begin to discover that girls, in spite of their cooties, are kind of cool. And, you know, it maybe happened at a different age. I was 10 years old in the 5th grade. I started school when I was 5. None of this kindergarten business back in the day. I started 1st grade when I was 5, barely 5. So I was always the youngest kid in my class. But even at 10 years old, I began to discover that some of the girls around me are kind of cute. And in the 5th grade, I was madly in love with my 5th grade teacher, Miss Gallup. Man, even now, the name, just, you know, if she's still alive, she's got to be around 80. There's a thought for you. Anyway, with modern American freedom in our culture, a boy can pursue any girl he wants, and a girl can pursue any boy she wants, pretty much, you know. As a young person, I could have had any girl I pleased. And the problem was I just didn't please any of them. I never had a girlfriend when I was a kid, but I desperately wanted one. Church youth camps helped out a little bit in that I sometimes could find somebody there that would like me back, so that was a plus for going to camps. But do you remember, can you remember back to when you were searching for that one special person? I mean, you might have been even at a pretty young age, and it may have happened a dozen times, I don't know. But when, you know, that you almost ache to have that special relationship. Can you relate? Or is that just, am I alone? Can you relate to that? Okay, so there's something propelling us into that direction. And, you know, if someone attractive to us liked us back, wow! I mean, that was cool. Do you remember the excitement of just holding hands? That's probably really, yes, are there others? I see that hand. Good. Yeah. Because, see, it was reciprocal. And all of a sudden, if you held hands, that meant the other person liked you too. And so then, you know, depending on the situation, you might get away with a hand on the shoulder, you know, and then, you know, how things kind of ratchet up from there. But in the traditional Christian American process, there used to be a process in which people would date, they would fall in love, they would get married, then they would have sex, then they would have children. There's an old saying, and maybe it's really old, first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes baby in the baby carriage. Any of you ever remember that? Yeah. Is that just for old guys? Okay, well today everything is really topsy-turvy. Today people may have sex, then may or may not decide to date, and which increasingly means just living together, may have children, then maybe at some point decide whether or not to get married. It's just about the only thing that remains constant in a lot of the world today is that sex typically comes before children. And now, however you got to where you are in your current relationship, and we're not going to have a quiz or have a show of hands here, so however that unfolded, there are some interesting dynamics at play that the author has discovered that I think most all of us will be able to relate to, and I really want you to think about and pay attention to that. It makes a difference, the stuff he's talking about. In the early attraction state of a relationship, there's great hope. Remember, I mean, the hope, wow, I hope this can work. Wow, I hope she likes me. This is exciting. And this maybe could go somewhere. And if it is reciprocated, then the relationship enters kind of a romance type phase. The author calls it the in love phase. Man, this is a powerful, powerful, powerful thing, this in love business. But it's largely fantasy, as we're in love with the expectations that we have placed on the other. You with me? And so it's a honeymoon phase, and it promises living happily ever after. That's where fairy tales and Hollywood leave us. Living happily ever after. That's where this class begins. Is at the point of saying, how do we go from the yippee-i-o phase to real life, and hopefully continue to have some yippee-i-o stuff involved. Marriage very quickly leads to reality, because marriage requires a commitment, an intermingling of life's affairs, physically, legally, financially, emotionally. Children ramp that up a goodly amount. And when suddenly one is locked in, that's when challenges can really begin, and reality begins to set in a lot harder. So as reality sets in, the knight in shining armor begins to show some rust spots. You know, one of the biggest shocks among those of the female persuasion is that men actually do not read their minds. Some women never get it. I know women 60 years old think their husbands still should get it. Current company excluded, I'm sure, but the fair damsel is all of a sudden seen without makeup, without the fancy hair, without the dressed up all cute and fancy, perhaps not always in a cheerful, supportive mode. And what can happen, resentments can begin to build as our expectations are not fulfilled. I believe that the temptation to resentment is found in every marriage. Do you agree? The temptation to resentment, are you with me? Okay. Because it just seems like that is a part and parcel of life. And we don't have to give into it, but that's what we will automatically boot up to if things begin to go sideways. We begin to take things for granted. We may get comfortable with the routine, but we also can get bored with the routine and restless. We long for some excitement, some romance. We long for a thrill. As we take things for granted, it becomes easy to nitpick, to argue, continually correct one another, hold grudges, and actually become adversarial. It's no longer us against the world, but it's us against one another. We can get to the place where we can't even have a conversation. One or both may begin to let themselves go, physically, emotionally, hygienically. I would just quit trying. So that's not a good place. Life can become a power struggle. And, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Why are we going to do it? That's not how my dad did it. That's not how my mom made gravy, all those kind of things. And it's easy for both partners to begin to feel justified and mistreated and ignored and even self-righteous. I'm doing everything I need to do, man. You're the one that has the problem. Even in our prayer life sometimes it is, dear Jesus, help this one to get squared away. Because she's got the problem. Right? You ever pray like that? Some of you have pinheads, I'm pretty sure. Often one or the other gives up. There's an old saying that says, he who loves least is in control. And what happens with this, as it gets into an adversarial thing or a power struggle, oftentimes one or the other begins to say, this is not worth it, this really stinks, they quit trying. So the one that loves the least kind of is in a position of power because they don't care as much. The other person is continually trying and trying and trying, so they're doing everything they can, but that can switch very quickly. When the person that's been trying and trying and trying, and the other's just been letting it go and be slack, all of a sudden the person that's trying says, I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand. And all of a sudden the power shifts. Now this can be a real power struggle and become a real source of manipulation, but that never works. The antidote for all these things is genuine, mature love, as Scripture defines it. And the author posits a foundational truth that each of us have different ways of receiving love and giving love, and I'm pretty convinced that most people don't ever figure that out. And so they begin to live lives maybe more of quiet desperation, alienation, isolation, becoming roommates, and missing the joy and fizz and joy of life that I think God has in store for us. So this series is to help us, each one, discover how we give and receive love and how our spouse does, so that living and working can become more joyful and beneficial. And I believe these concepts, honestly applied, will make a positive difference in any marriage. So these are going to be short, easy reading chapters. I encourage you to jump in and do it. You're going to be a little behind because we're kind of giving you a rough draft of the first 2 chapters. But catch up and read ahead, and each of the sessions will, I think, mean a lot more. And then there'll be some discussion around the table. Lord bless you.
Thank you, Larry and Rena. Our next couple is going to talk to us about keeping the love tank full. This is chapter 2. Now I got to tell you, our next guest speakers, they have been living out this book, I would say, for many years. Where I just discovered it last year, they have been using this in their ministry with other couples for years. And when it comes to keeping the love tank full, that's not just a saying to them. It is something that they live out, and it's been amazing to see. So please help me in welcoming Mark and Terry Williams.
So as Rob was saying, Mark and I have kind of been dealing with this book for a long time, probably about 20 years ago. Yeah, we first encountered it in a weekend enjoying marriage seminar, and they would use a lot of the concepts and principles, and so we kind of got the concept then, and then we became marriage counselors through one of our churches, and we did a lot of marriage counseling for a long time and used a lot of these tools. And so over the next 6 weeks, you're going to hear a lot about the primary love language and love tank. You're going to find out very simply that learning your spouse's and your own love language and how to speak that in your daily lives will keep your love tank full. So what is a love language? Well, it's that way that you and your spouse best receive love. Do you feel loved when your mate brings you a gift? Or maybe when they do something special for you? Or maybe if they give you a nice warm hug? Or a tender kiss? There are several different primary love languages that you're going to learn about over the course of the next 6 weeks. You'll learn about them, and you'll learn to discern which one speaks most to you and which one to your spouse. You'll also learn how to apply them in your everyday life to make your marriage much more fulfilling.
In the book, Gary Chapman presents us with this concept of the love tank. Our love tank is that place within us that holds all the moments and feelings of being loved by our spouse, our children, our friends. Psychologists have concluded that the need to feel loved is a primary human emotional need. Love is a basic need that brings with it an emotional stability. If you're being shown love by your spouse, then your love tank is being filled and there's balance in your marriage.
When we first fall in love with each other, our love need is met. We're happy all the time, thinking about the other person. I think Rena explained it as giddy love. And that love feeling, though, is kind of fleeting. And it doesn't last forever, as some of you may know at this point. So to speak, the shine can wear off of the new penny. Once you marry and you move on in your lives, everyday stresses can enter in. And that first love can just fade away. And then you're left with an empty love tank. That is, if you're not doing things to help fill it back up.
It is vital in our marriages that we strive to keep our spouse's love tank full. How do we do that? We must learn our spouse's love language and seek to minister to their needs through it. There are things we must do on a daily basis to keep that tank from becoming empty and jeopardizing the balance that is in our marriages. I suggest that you pray and seek ways, little things, thoughtful things, that will let your spouse know they're special and truly loved. Walk up and give a warming hug or a gentle kiss.
Tell them often and every day that you love them.
Make them a cup of coffee or tea, or offer to do laundry or help with the dishes.
Surprise them with their favorite meal, or give them a little gift. I picked that up for you tonight.
Write them a love letter.
There are many ways that we can reach out to the one that we love and express them and let them know that they're special. So be creative. Go out of your way. Really bless their socks off, you know. One thing that Mark and I learned really early on in our marriage is that God wants us to always put that other person first. If you use this in your marriage, you're never going to go wrong.
We also need to strive to stay away from the negative. We all have human sinful natures. We are all going to make mistakes, and that is why God provided forgiveness. If we are first striving to keep our spouse's love tank full, then it'll be easy to be forgiven when we mess up. All of this, of course, requires you to be focused on your spouse and to have your heart in the proper place. In order to have your heart in the proper place and to be able to share that love with your spouse, you, of course, need to understand that love was given to you by the Creator Himself. As Christ died for us and became that sacrificial love for us, we should give that love to our spouses sacrificially with a servant's heart, even when we're tired, even when we're super busy, and even when we're stressed out to the max.
So tonight, I want you all to do a tank check. Is your tank overfilling? Is it just overflowing to, just has that person in your life been doing everything right, Or is your tank sucking fumes? More often than not, I think that's the case. We don't always, we just get so busy in our everyday lives that we don't have that time to always invest. And it's so important. So I want you to talk to one another. I want you to ask the other how you're doing. How's your love tank? I want you to inquire with your spouse if they're feeling loved. Now, some of you may not want to know the answer. It may not be pretty. And some of you may know the answer even before you ask. But that's why you're here. That's why you're here for the next 6 weeks. This is the beginning to discovering and to gauging your marriage. Like I said, it may not all be rosy, but it's a starting point to make your relationship a priority. This will put you on a path to working harder and not just letting something that's so important simply just exist, but instead for it to grow and flourish.
Terry and I have a check and balance system. We oftentimes ask one another, how's your tank? If we seem to be feeling overwhelmed or empty, we know it is time to get away and spend some good quality time with one another. One of our favorite things to do is to pack a picnic and go for a drive on some place we've never been before. or just explore and to find new places. We enjoy each other's company, and oftentimes a beautiful setting and just relaxing one another is in a non-stressful environment. Sometimes at the end of the day, we'll just come home, sit on the couch, and just be there. You know, sometimes we just watch TV, just enjoying each other's company. And when you spend that time together and you decompress, then without verbally talking to the other person, then you have that nonverbal communication. You have that enjoying that quiet peace together.
We have a lot of fun memories of ways to keep our love tanks full. We used to live in the state of Hawaii on the island of Maui. I absolutely love the beach. And one of the things that we really enjoyed doing is we had this string hammock. And we would take it down to the beach and string it between two coconut trees and just climb up in it and just chill with each other. We would just talk and enjoy the time, and we did it quite often. And I remember this one time we went down, it was probably late afternoon, and we found these two perfect coconut trees on the beach, and you know, we strung our hammock out, and the sun was just so warm, and the Pacific breeze was blowing, and I just had laid my head on Mark's chest, and we were laying there just relaxing, and we fell asleep. And about 2 hours later, we woke up, and the tide had come in. And it was pretty funny. Well, you saw me getting up on the stool, okay? Could you imagine me trying to get down out of a hammock fully clothed and making it to shore? It was a lot of fun, I'll tell you. But there's just so many ways that you guys can take time and enjoy each other's company, you know, whatever it might be. And it's so important for your marriages to keep them whole and healthy. And so spending time is one of them, or doing things for each other, or giving gifts, or writing love notes. There's just so many things that you can do. And like I said, I really want you to be creative, and I want you to start thinking of things that you can do to bless your spouse, because this is what it's all about. I really encourage you to make some memories, and never forget trying to be creative and keep filling your spouse's love tank every single day.
It's like when you see your spouse really exhausted on the couch, you know. Most guys don't want to get up and do anything, so I'll see she's exhausted, I say, you want something to drink, and I'll make her a glass of chocolate milk, you know. It's just, or it's like, I know she's working late, I'll do the laundry, so that weekend then we have time to spend together instead of having to do the laundry. It's just trying to think outside the box of how to meet your spouse's needs.
Well, thank you, Mark and Terry. Okay, so that's chapters 1 and 2. And so next week we're going to get into chapters 3 and 4. So I encourage you, for one, get caught up with 1 and 2. It's really not going to take you very long to read those chapters. And then hit, for sure, chapters 3 and 4. So we heard a little bit about this love tank tonight. Next week we're going to get into our first love language. We're going to discover love language number 1. All right, so read up on that. And now we're going to take about whatever time we've got left here, about 10 or 12 minutes, and have an opportunity to meet with the people at your table. All right, we've got a few questions laid out. We have a host couple at each table. You could raise your hand, and I'm the host couple over here. So your host couple is going to walk you through just a couple of questions here. The first one is an icebreaker. It says, share how long you've been married and a funny or cute experience from one of your first dates. We'll take a couple of those questions. Well, I'll ask Pastor Larry to close us out in prayer. And don't forget, part of this is that we wanted to give, especially this weekend, this is Valentine's Day weekend, an opportunity. We wanted to share hopefully some stimulating thoughts, set a romantic mood, get some appetizers out, and we want to kick you out of the door and go enjoy the rest of your evening. To go have some time together, whether it's dinner or a walk or a discussion in the car, and if you brought your kids, We're happy to watch them until 11 o'clock tonight, all right? So we're going to spend a little bit of time now, get to know each other, and then we'll wrap it up here in about 10 minutes or so. Thank you. There's just absolutely not enough time to get through all these questions, is there? And we're still having a good time over here. But and you are more than welcome to stick around and get to know each other. You know, all this food's got to go one way or another, so whatever's left, have at it. I'm going to ask Pastor Larry now if he would close us in prayer.
All right, well, this is a great crew. I think it's going to be a fun time. I hope you connected well with some of the concepts. It is really an introduction as you get into the book. I hope you'll take some time. Mark it up. I encourage you to, underline stuff, put stars by it or whatever, and maybe do it in different color pencil or whatever like that, or so that you and each of you talk about it. I think the real value, however much we will put into really attempting to catch some of these concepts, whatever we sow, we'll reap. And if the more we put in, the more we will get out, and the more we serve, the more, really the blessings are. It's an entirely different worldview than most people have of marriage. When folks are coming to me typically for marriage, almost without exception, what has happened is that each one has begun to think of their own needs. This is not fair, this is not just, this is not fun, and when that can even just be turned to start thinking about how can I serve the other, how can I bless the other, things can turn around profoundly. But as we talked about at our table, that needs to be reset. You got to reset that thing pretty often, or we will just boot up wrong. And so this is maybe hopefully a tune-up. Well, let's pray, and I don't know if there's any other thing that we need to do, but is there any thing that we need to talk about or address next week? Same time, same station. Try to be here, if you can, to be here by 1:15 or so. There'll be some goodies and whatever stuff like that happening. It gives us time to get set. We would like to be able to jump in at 7 o'clock and do it. And, again, the theory and the plan is that at 8 o'clock we'd like to be able to let you go if you need to do that, so that, you've got kids and you got other kind of things. We'll see how it goes. And each table can kind of decide what you need to do, but man, we just hope you're blessed. Let's pray. Father, I especially thank you for Rob and the vision that you put on his heart, and what a blessing it is to see all of these folks gathered together. Lord, I want to pray for each couple that is here, each person, and you alone know the deep joys, dreams, sorrows, hurts, wounds that are here. And Father, I want to pray in the name of Jesus that over the time you would begin to heal, you would begin to recover, you'd be able to restore the joy of our salvation, that marriages would be touched, encouraged, strengthened, and children and children's children to the third and fourth generation would be blessed as a result of what happens here. And as we go from this place, we pray that you protect the kids and everybody that's scattering to the various places on the roads and all. We just pray for your protection and your direction in Jesus' name. Amen.